So DESPIA is a tier 1 deck on pretty much everybody's radar, and it has a lot going for it, but how are we supposed to beat it? Well, today I'll show you side deck options that will allow you to cover as much ground as possible and increase your win rate post game 1, so on game 2 and 3, which is just about 50 to 67% of your games. But before this video starts, make sure you like and subscribe, check me out on Twitch and Instagram, and now let's jump right into it. So I'll start with the going first cards because they're insanely obvious. I think both Dimensional Barrier and Non-Fusion Area are probably the best cards to counter DESPIA for pretty obvious reasons again. However, they outclass each other in different contexts. D-Barrier is actually the safest option because it almost guarantees to be resolving every single time you use it because it's a lingering card. So it doesn't matter if your opponent has Lightning Storm or Twin Twister Cosmic Cyclone for your D-Barrier, you just chain it and it resolves. So your opponent basically needs something like a Red Reboot, which is at 1, or Crossout Designator, granted the fact that he also cited at least one copy of D-Barrier going second, and that's a concession that a lot of people are not willing to do. This makes it so D-Barrier is very, very safe and very worth playing in trap-heavy decks because those decks have a tendency to be afraid of back row removal cards such as Lightning Storm, Duster, to win Cosmic Cyclone, etc. So playing a card like Non-Fusion Area might be a little win more and very dangerous because if your opponent has the back row removal that counters your other cards, he's also countering your Non-Fusion Area, and that makes you lose all the value that you were supposed to have if you had a card like D-Barrier, which would allow you to buy a lot of time. And D-Barrier also covers more ground against the other matchups, whereas Non-Fusion Area is a little too restricted to only fusion-based strategies and decks that use Anaconda into Phoenix and Force Dragoon, whereas D-Barrier can be used against Sword Soul, Drytron for the rituals, Pendulum, etc. Other going first options would be Artifact Sanctum into Artifact Scythe, or even just Dagda into Artifact Scythe. However, you do need to take into consideration the fact that your opponent might still be able to play, well, I mean your opponent, the DESPIA player might be able to play using cards like Branded in Red to fuse on your own turn, or Branded Exile, which will be out in YCS Hartford. And also another card that would be very, very good against DESPIA would be Anti-Spell Fragrance, because the very important normal spell cards, well, obviously the spell cards are normal spell cards, the most important ones, such as Branded Fusion. However, Branded in Red and Branded Opening can be chained to Anti-Spell. And Anti-Spell also kind of gives you protection, because if you get, if you're, let's say, playing a control deck, well, you're protecting yourself from Duster and Lightning Storm, and if you're playing a combo deck, you're protecting yourself from Dark Ruler No More when you have a card like Anti-Spell, so it covers, again, a lot of ground. And Artifact Sanctum is also pretty interesting because if your opponent is trying to destroy the Sanctum and you chain it, not only will you summon the Scythe and lock your opponent, but also the Sanctum will trigger to destroy another card on the field. Now, a card that might be good going first and second, but a little niche, would be Prohibition, because you can call Fallen of Albaz so that the card can never really be used. So it can be used as a fusion material to summon your big fusion monsters. So Branded Fusion becomes completely dead. And also Branded in Red can be a card that you can call going second so that your opponent can't really use it or has to chain it to your Prohibition. Or maybe calling something like Guardian Chimera or Mirror Jade. All those options are pretty nice. The going second options are also super straightforward, so less explanations will have to be required in this section. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries is pretty fantastic against Lubellion, but pretty garbage against the other cards because Lubellion can actually shuffle them back into the extra deck. Now, DD Crow and Ghost Bell are both kind of tied depending on the situation, but DD Crow is typically the safer option because Ghost Bell unfortunately negates the activation, which means that under Branded Lost, you cannot use a card like Ghost Bell, whereas under Branded Lost, you can still use DD Crow because it doesn't really matter that you can't really negate the activation of cards and effects that are trying to fusion summon, since all you're really doing is banishing the target with Branded in Red so that it cannot fully resolve and fuse on your own turn, which would be summoning Guardian Chimera and Mirror Jade. So one single DD Crow actually acts as a super forbidden droplet on crack, and that's the reason why I'm a big fan of the card. An obvious side deck option would be Super Polymerization because most decks are light and dark attributes, so you can always fuse for your own fusion monsters if you're playing a DESPIA mirror match, or for cards like Predaplan, Dragostapelia, Starving Venom, Trifu Verdum, etc. On your own turn, you have turn player priority when your opponent summons Mirror Jade off of Ad Libitum, so you can chain Super Poly on the summon and immediately fuse away that Mirror Jade and something else before it has the ability to use its effect, and that way you can kind of make sure that your cards never get banished off of Mirror Jade. Since hand traps might not always be the best cards against Despia because they might have the negate with Griffin Rider or might protect their plays with Branded Lost, you might want to play conventional staples that are also good against the other decks, such as Call by the Grave, Triple Tactic Talents, Forbidden Droplet, Cosmic Cyclone, which can actually force out the Branded in red very early because if your opponent has to summon Guardian Chimera when you have an empty board, Guardian Chimera will simply not trigger because it has to both draw cards and destroy cards on your field in order to resolve. So in other words, Cosmic Cyclone actually trades very well in this instance. There are a bunch of cards I haven't mentioned, such as Retaliating Seed, Dimension Shifter, etc. But if I did, this video would be a little too long. So yeah, Despia is definitely a great deck, but it definitely can be stopped, especially post game 1 when you start using your side deck. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.